Alright, InstaHot gang. So, in the last video we left off at this point where upon looking into the cartridge assembly here after the handle and everything's been removed, there's clearly a provision to remove it, but you're going to need some kind of special socket. Now the size I found is 14 millimeters, which I think virtually every socket set would have. However, if you take a 14 socket like this, you're going to find that actually it clashes because the diameter, the outer diameter is too high. So I bought this socket just as a kind of a guinea pig. So I'm going to grind off some material from the outside to see if it'll fit. I don't want to ruin one of my own sockets. I also went ahead and bought a metric O-ring assortment here. So you can see there's 18 sizes. I'm hoping that one of them is close enough. If it doesn't work, then we'll go from there. But anyway, we're going to go outside and grind this down until it fits inside this little hole. Okay, so my OSHA approved solution is an angle grinder with a grinding disc fitted. And all I'm going to do is just, I put the socket here on a 1/4 inch drive extension. I think it's a 3-inch extension. And I'm just going to make some passes as I rotate it around and kind of gradually take material off and then go inside and test fit it as we get down and until eventually it fits. Alright, so actually that was pretty quick. I was thinking that it might be longer than I thought because typically sockets are some kind of hardened steel. But no, actually less than 2 minutes, just a really quick pass. See what this actually picks up. I didn't take off as much as I could have, but I got pretty close around the corners here. Again, you can kind of tell maybe by the outside how much I took off. It wasn't really that much. So I also, another learning was I went to a 6-inch extension. This is a 3/8 inch drive. The shorter extension, but I was using my foot to hold it down. It was way too close to the angle grinder. So if you have a vise, you probably want to use that. I don't know where mine is. Let's go ahead and test fit it. It looks like we're in. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is live. I've actually, see if it comes, it's already actually quite loose. I don't know if it's biting. Like I said, this is 100% live. I have not taken this out yet. Oh, I think we're moving the whole thing. Did it move the base? Yeah, if you look closely, this whole base is moving. So I'm going to put the camera down so I can maybe hold this while I do it, and then we'll come back. Alright, so they're both out. I just had to counter hold this with my other hand, which I couldn't do while I was filming. This is what they both look like. So right away, as you can see, there's the hex profile there. You can kind of see a spring at the top. You can kind of see also there's a transparent O-ring here around the top of it. And then of course there's a black O-ring around the center. At the bottom, note these 4 holes. So this will become key later, which we'll find out again. And then when we depress this, you can see that there's this white plastic bit that goes all the way through it. And when you depress it, you can also, if you look closely, see there's an O-ring peeking out there. Let's look at what this came out of a little bit closely. See if I can do this justice. This is an okay angle right here. So on the right hand side, on the cold side for me, at the 7 o'clock position, you can see a small black hole. And my theory, what I think anyway, is that the water comes out of the center. And when the valve opens, there's connectivity between the center, the big hole, and that small 7 o'clock position hole. And on the hot side on the left, you can see a similar hole at 6 o'clock position. There was a lot of crud in here that I cleaned out some of it already the best I could, and I'll be cleaning this out more before I put it back together. You can also see these, what look from this angle like black O-rings that are around the bottom, and I believe that's what these little brass cartridges seat against, and we can see that here at the bottom. You can kind of see it's a little bit shiny, so I'm guessing that when you run these all the way down and they're tight, there's a seal created, so that center bore is basically sealed against this. So when this is therefore all the way in, these 4 holes on the outside are probably on the same elevation as those holes that we see at the 6 o'clock and the 7 o'clock positions here. So below the O-rings, there's a cavity though, and obviously I haven't taken it apart to that level, and I don't really think I can without, you know, cutting open the faucet. I'm not going to do that. But it looks like below that O-ring, there's probably a couple, maybe a millimeter or two, and then there's probably some kind of an opening down there where you know, water can come through. So what I'm about to show you is a theory, and this is how I think it works. I think it's probably a good chance that I'm right, but please don't take this for 100% fact, because there's no information out there, and this is just the best that I could come up with just from looking at it. So again, this is the one from the hot side, I think. No. Yeah, the hot side, and it's still put together with the spring and everything. It turned out that if you pull this white bit out, it's actually only held in by friction, and it comes apart into 3 pieces. So of course you've got this white plastic part with the 3 O-rings, the 2 small black ones and the big transparent one. There's the spring, and then you have this brass housing. If we look at the brass housing on the inside, you can kind of see, well, there's not really a lot going on. There's no other ports on it. But in the center, you can kind of see this raised lip, and it goes a couple millimeters higher than, I guess, the rest of it. So that's the same diameter, and it is a seal fit against these O-rings. So if I was to push this in, as soon as I get that O-ring centered in there, it immediately... Oh, that's the last thing I need, is one of these going down the drain there. As soon as I put this in, it immediately starts to build friction. So that O-ring is a fit, and if I continue to press it down, it all of a sudden, you know, it's loose because we're in that space between the 2 O-rings. And as I continue to press it in, this clear O-ring now engages the top diameter of this brass housing, and I can continue to press it down as that. Now it's the upper O-ring that's engaged on that part. Previously it was the same part that the bottom O-ring was touching, but now it's the top O-ring that's engaging against it. And I can push this down quite a bit. And yeah, this clear O-ring is obviously designed to travel, you know, in this surface here. So let's talk about the stack up. So previously in part 1, I remember pointing out these splines on the inside, and I wasn't really sure at that point what they were for. That was before I knew that there was this hex pattern. So if I go ahead and I take this one, all this is going to be a lot easier to show you when the spring's not installed, so I'm just going to use this one. As you might have already guessed, it's a perfect fit for the hex. So this slides right on like that. And this allows you, if you were installing this, you could basically, once this hex is tight, you could basically take this and you could move it a little bit here to the, you know, a couple degrees in each direction, all the way around, and you could basically be pointing the handles whichever way you wanted. So let's look at what it looks like when we do a full stack up, because I want to know basically where this plunger is when the handle is installed, and then where this bottom O-ring is when you press the lever, because that's going to tell us the flow of the water. So I'm going to assemble this and then pick the camera back up. Okay, I really apologize. I'm filming with my cell phone, and I don't really have a good setup to do a better job of this, but I've gone ahead and put that little chrome part that holds the handle on top of the hex. So this is when the handle is all the way in, and you would see it when it's in this position, the handle's completely at the off position. The plunger sticks out by quite a bit. I mean, that's at least like 4 or 5 millimeters out of the bottom. And if you were to then move the handle, it would actually plunge it out even further. So if we look at the valve that's at rest, you can see that this is actually, if the handle was installed, like if you were to tighten down that nut, it would actually drive this down to where, if we take this off, you could see. So when the handle's installed, this clear O-ring, the transparent one, is actually always inside of this brass housing. The only reason it looks like this now is because the handle's not installed on top of it. So it would actually never be like this, where it's this far high when everything is put back together. So this clear O-ring, of course, would be preventing any water from coming out the top, and this black O-ring, I'm guessing, as you can tell from the hard water marks, it would just be keeping everything, you know, below this point. So when it's screwed all the way in, nothing should be coming back up and leaking from around the base of the handles here. Those at least were working fine. Now, let's talk about what happens. So, recall, our theory is that this brass part, where it's shiny, bottoms out against those little black O-rings inside there in the bottom, the horizontal ones. Which means that this bottom O-ring, when it's in the installed orientation, the spring is compressed like this, is actually sitting inside that diameter. If that's the case, then this is blocked. So this is basically blocking any water from coming forward, and therefore none can come out of these 4 little holes to go into those ports and come out the handle or whatever, come out the faucet. But if you twist the handle and move this down farther, so say it goes down like another millimeter or 2, there's this cavity in the bottom underneath those O-rings, and it's hard to see, and I don't know how deep it goes, but it must be just enough. But when you do that, this moves down even farther. And what happens is water is allowed basically around this O-ring and out of these holes here. So if we have a leak, it's probably from these O-rings, crap building up, which I clearly have. And yeah, it could be as simple as that. So what I'm going to do now is take these O-rings off, and we're going to try and find the closest size, clean it up, put it back together, and see if it worked. Alright guys, another letdown here. There's going to have to be a part 3 because I have to get more stuff to finish this. I went ahead and pried off one of the O-rings here with a seal pick, and it's in the middle. On my left is the closest O-ring I could find as far as diameter, which was one of these 4x1 millimeter. The next size up is a 4.5x2, which is this one. So it looks like we're now in the ballpark as far as the thickness of the O-ring, but now we're obviously quite a bit higher on the diameter. So both of these go back. So it looks like, I guess a good size would be probably 4x2 millimeter O-ring as far as metric, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is an imperial size. I'm not an O-ring expert. I'm not really sure, the most common dimensions. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just put it back together with the original O-rings. I'm going to clean out the housings and put some Sil Glide silicone lubricant on everything and see if it leaks. And that's the best that I'm going to be able to do tonight. If it continues to leak, I'll go ahead and get new O-rings and install those and see if it helps. But yeah, this is going to be at least another day or 2 before the size of O-ring shows up. Also, I just wanted to show this quickly. I just put a little bit of vinegar in a cup, and I put all these parts in here just to try and get some of this crap off the easy way. Swishing it around for maybe no more than 30 seconds, and look at all the rubbish that's floating around. Those are all big chunks of that scaling that was building up on the brass housings. So I'm going to let this go for about, I'll say like maybe 15 minutes and come back to it. I think that's getting a ton of the crap off of it. I also put a little bit of white vinegar down into these 2 bores in hopes that that can break off some of the crap that's building up, and then I'll do a little bit of mechanical removal the best I can. It's just a little bit tricky to clean down inside there. Okay, actually there is one quick thing I was thinking would be worth sharing. So I was just in the middle of cleaning these out a little bit more, so I let some vinegar soak in here for around 15 minutes, and I noticed here, I'm going to put the Q-tip down the hole, and you can see how if I push it on the left, it comes out on the right. So these two must be connected pretty close to the faucet, which, yeah, likewise here, if I'll do it on this side, you can kind of see. I'm actually thinking now that maybe these two big holes in the middle, previously I said those are probably where the water comes in, and when the valve opens, they go out these two little small side holes here. But in fact, I'm now suspecting it's the opposite, where actually those two small holes are the inlets, and the two big holes are the outlets that go down into everything else. Well, for the cold, it would come right out here. For the hot, it would go down. That wouldn't change anything from how the valves work. That previous theory would still be true. But yeah, so after 15 minutes, these came out looking really, really good, actually, considering all I did was let them soak in vinegar. I'm pretty happy with these. I'm probably just going to use an old toothbrush and get some of the big stuff off and then slap it back together. So I got these valves back installed, so you can feel that they're sliding nice and smoothly now with that new silicone grease on. I just used a little bit of this. So glad I use this for when I'm doing brakes on my cars. I doubt it's food grade, but yeah, whatever. Just to see if it works. Alright guys, so I've come across what to me so far has been the hardest part of this entire project, and that is putting these little handles back on. So the issue is, obviously these are spring loaded, and you have your little assembly here. You have three things going on at once. One, you're trying to press this down. Two, you're trying to, line up this little collar here. Three, this stupid little pin is always constantly moving back and forth. So every time you think you've got it, well, the little pin's out of line, or the collar pops up slightly and you start cross-threading it, or your hand just gets tired because you're constantly having to use one hand to press it down and the other hand to try and get the thread started. So I ripped out this center post, or the center faucet here, as you can see, and I'm hoping that where this plastic part ends at the bottom is actually by design and it's not because I broke it there. This is held in. Since I already managed to pull it out, we might as well talk about that next. So you can see there's coming out of the chrome assembly, there's an O-ring here. And again, I'm not sure if this was because of me being a Neanderthal and I ripped it. It's kind of a double ribbed O-ring. There's already a flat spot on it. Or if that's a split ring by design, and then there again this 4-hole thing here that we saw on the valves, but it's being blocked by this plastic tube, so I'm not really sure what's going on. There's no reason for this to be any kind of valve, so I'm gonna put a little bit of the silicone grease on it and slide it back in and hope it doesn't leak. And if it does leak, I'm already mad enough at this crappy design that I'm just gonna replace it anyway, I think, with a more generic, just cold water only faucet, and just trash the entire InstaHot system. I'm serious, I think it's a crappy design, and if yours is leaking, just get rid of it. I'm seriously, that's my opinion. So anyway, if you're still watching this and you're still wanting to repair yours, I've honestly lost a lot of faith in the last day of trying to repair mine. Here's at least a little bit of a tip that might help you. So remember that there's a really thin kind of a shim washer that goes in between this collar and where it runs down into here. The reason that you probably can't see it is I've actually used a little bit of this silicone grease, and I smeared it on the washer, and I put the washer in here, and the grease kind of acts like a glue to keep the washer from falling out. Kind of just like a small little trick I'm using to have one less part that's floating around while I'm trying to screw it down. And the same for this. So on this one that I just did, what I did is I slid this pin out and I put just a very small amount of silicone grease on the pin, and then I put the pin back in, and that grease kind of keeps it from moving back and forth so much. It keeps it relatively where you put it. So that might help. as you're putting it back together, because it seriously is frustrating. I've got a 19 millimeter wrench. My box end side of it is a perfect fit, but for some reason the flats on this side are just a little bit too small, so I think it's probably a 3/4 inch imperial dimension. So the 19 millimeter is really, really close, but not quite perfect. So we're going to go through another session of swearing and cursing the engineers that designed this, and put this back in, put the faucet back in, and then hopefully I'll have a leak test for you guys. And I actually just forgot. There is a detail here to note when you're putting this back together. And I didn't catch this actually until recently. So if you look down, and we're looking at, remember this this part that goes down top of the valve. If you look closely, this side, if you see the top face of it here, is actually thinner than this side. And I thought it might have been an illusion until I took it back out and actually looked at it, and actually it's machined that way. And the reason is, from what I can tell, is obviously you can push it farther this side than you can this side. So when you're putting it back together, you don't want to get it off by 180 degrees. You want to make sure that the thin side is kind of facing in the direction that, you know, the primary travel direction of the handle. So easy mistake to make. Like I said, I didn't even catch it until I was putting it back together. Alright guys, well this is going to be the last segment. Kind of the final test. It's all put back together. Both of our handles are operating smoothly. So it all feels good. I really hope I didn't break anything when I took this off. It was a little bit out of frustration because I was really struggling to get these two color nuts back in. But if any of it leaks, I already decided that I'm just going to replace it with a, you know, a more generic little spigot there. The InstaHot isn't that important to me. So let's go ahead and turn the water on. I actually have not turned it on yet. I'm genuinely doing this for the first time on camera to see. So as my cold is off, and we'll go down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on while I keep the camera hopefully pointing at that faucet assembly, and you can see in real time what happens. So, alright, here we go, water's coming on. Here she goes. Well, I'll be. That's all the way open. Turn my light off. Let's see. Get the air out. The true test will be, let's turn the cold on. It's not really a great stream. I should probably clean out. I'll soak this in vinegar too. It's kind of like when you take a piss first thing in the morning. It's kind of how it's coming out. Let's try the hot. Oh shit, I forgot. I need to plug this back in. Oh, that'll definitely help it work properly. Yeah, we're ready to go ahead and clean this out. And actually, I think I did break something when I did that. That's probably why this isn't coming out properly. If there's any leak. Alright guys, well this is going to be the last segment. Kind of the final test. It's all put back together. Both of our handles are operating smoothly. So it all feels good. I really hope I didn't break anything when I took this off. It was a little bit out of frustration because I was really struggling to get these two color nuts back in. But if any of it leaks, I already decided that I'm just going to replace it with a, you know, a more generic little spigot there. The InstaHot isn't that important to me. So let's go ahead and turn the water on. I actually have not turned it on yet. I'm genuinely doing this for the first time on camera to see. So as my cold is off, and we'll go down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on while I keep the camera hopefully pointing at the faucet assembly, and you can see in real time what happens. So, alright. Here we go. Water's coming on. Here she goes. Well, I'll be. It's all the way open. Turn my light off. Let's see. Get the air out. The true test will be, let's turn the cold on. It's not really a great stream. I should probably clean out. I'll soak this in vinegar too. It's kind of like when you take a piss first thing in the morning. It's kind of how it's coming out. Let's try the hot. Alright, sorry. I had to pause the video back there because what happened was I turned on the cold side and it worked fine. I turned on the hot side and immediately I heard a bunch of water underneath my countertop. And I had actually forgotten to... I had taken this little blue inlet hose off for some reason, so when I turned the hot on, it all came gushing out. So with that back in place, you can see the hot, works fine. Yeah, they both work fine. And I went ahead and took off the little end nozzle here that just threads on. So it was giving me a weird stream. It wasn't really flowing the way that I was used to, and I think it's just because of debris on the inside. I soaked it for around 15 minutes. But I must have the brown touch because when I put it back on, it was actually worse. So I'm just going to soak it overnight in some white vinegar and try it again in the morning. But with the nozzle off, I mean, obviously it's coming out just fine. I don't see any leaks anywhere. So guys, I hope that this helped you out. If you were looking for a good guide for how this works, how to diagnose it, how to repair it, I was pretty frustrated a while back there at the whole system. It is honestly a little bit annoying to deal with. It's not designed to be serviceable. The fact that they ask you to get a whole new faucet assembly near $350 just for this, which is most of the price of the whole system, is, to me, I don't know. I don't like it. And like we had to modify a socket with a grinder just to get it apart and replace some 4-cent O-rings, which fixed the whole problem. Nothing about that to me is a good design. So for now, well, it's not leaking anymore, right? So I'm gonna keep on moving ahead with it, and if it starts leaking again, then I probably will go ahead and just I'm just gonna remove all the InstaHot stuff and just go back to a more conventional setup. But I hope this helped you. Please, by all means, if you know something or have a better idea or an improvement on this, please leave it in the comments so the next guy or girl that searches this information can find it and benefit from it. Alright guys, well, take care.